The drilling machine hit something that should not have been there. David stopped the controls and checked his scanner twice, convinced the readings were wrong. Nothing living could survive this far below the ice surface where temperatures dropped to minus 200 degrees. Yet the thermal signature pulsed weak but steady on his screen. "Rachel, you need to see this." He tapped his communication device and waited for the biologist to respond. The mining operation on this frozen moon had been running for 6 months without anything unusual happening. They extracted rare minerals from deep ice layers and sent them back to Earth. Simple work, boring work, safe work. Rachel arrived at the drill site within 10 minutes, her breath forming white clouds despite the heated suit she wore. She studied the scanner and her eyes grew wide. That's a life sign. 2 of them, actually. Impossible. This moon has no native life. The survey teams checked everything before we started operations. Well, something is down there and it's alive. Rachel grabbed a thermal probe from her equipment belt. "We need to investigate. If there's an undiscovered species, we have to document it." David wanted to argue that their job was mining, not biology, but curiosity won over caution. He redirected the drill to create a wider access tunnel, while Rachel prepared her field kit. 20 minutes later, they descended into the ice cave his machine had accidentally opened. The passage was narrow, and the walls glowed blue in their helmet lights. Rachel went first, following the thermal readings deeper into the cave system. David followed close behind, watching his oxygen levels and wondering what kind of creature could survive in this frozen hell. The cave opened into a larger chamber. Rachel stopped so suddenly that David nearly crashed into her back. She pointed her light at the floor. 2 small creatures lay huddled together on the bare ice. They were unlike anything David had seen in 20 years of space work. Their bodies were covered in scales that shimmered between blue and silver. Small wings pressed tight against their sides. Long tails wrapped around each other. They looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, except these were real and dying. They're freezing to death. Rachel dropped to her knees beside the creatures. She pulled off her glove and carefully touched one. Its scales felt like ice crystals.
"How are they even still alive?"
David scanned the chamber and found what he was looking for. Equipment residue, fabric fragments, chemical traces. Someone was here recently. This was a camp. Who would camp in an ice cave? The Quartal. David pointed to a marking burned into the wall. He recognized the symbol from diplomatic briefings. The Quartal were an alien species that controlled several systems near human space. They were known for being strict and cold in every way that mattered. This is one of their ritual marks. Rachel carefully examined the baby dragons. They were barely breathing. Their small chests rose and fell so slowly it was painful to watch. They were left here on purpose. Someone abandoned them to die. The Quartal have rules about genetic purity. I read something once about them destroying offspring that don't meet their standards. David felt sick saying it out loud. These 2 are twins. Maybe that's why. That's murder. Rachel's voice was hard and angry. She opened her field kit and pulled out a thermal blanket. She wrapped it around both creatures, then activated the heating elements. "We're taking them back to the station." "Rachel, think about this. If the Quartal left them here, they had a reason according to their laws. Taking them could create a diplomatic incident. I don't care about their laws. These are babies. Helpless babies left to freeze. What kind of species does that?" She carefully lifted both creatures. They weighed almost nothing. Any civilization that abandons children to die doesn't deserve respect or diplomacy. David knew she was right, even if it meant trouble later. He helped her secure the creatures in a transport container with heated padding. They made their way back up through the ice tunnel to the surface station. The rest of the crew gathered when word spread about the discovery. 15 people total worked on the mining station, and all of them crowded into the medical bay to see the strange creatures Rachel was trying to save. She had connected them to warming units and was running every scan her equipment could perform. "Their body temperature is rising, but it's still dangerously low," she explained while adjusting settings. "Their metabolism is incredibly slow. That's probably why they survived as long as they did. Their bodies shut down to conserve energy." One of the miners, an older woman named Beth, leaned closer. "What are they exactly?" "I don't know yet. The genetic structure is complex. They're definitely sentient based on brain scan patterns. Intelligence level similar to dolphins or maybe higher." Rachel checked another monitor. "They're not animals. They're people. The smaller of the two creatures stirred slightly. Its eyes opened just a crack, revealing pupils that glowed like amber. It looked directly at Rachel and made a soft sound, barely more than a whisper. Then its tail moved and wrapped around her wrist. Rachel froze. She felt something strange, like a warm touch inside her mind. Not words exactly, but feelings. Gratitude, relief, trust. The sensation faded as the creature slipped back into unconscious rest. But Rachel knew what she had experienced was real. "They're trying to bond with you," David said quietly. He had seen the moment pass between them. "I think they know you saved them." Station Commander Robert Hayes pushed through the crowd. He was a practical man who usually avoided drama, but his expression was troubled. "We need to vote on this. Keeping them means going against Cordal customs. That could end badly for all of us." The crew looked at each other. Then Beth spoke up. "I vote we keep them. Anyone who abandons babies in an ice cave can go to hell. Their customs don't apply to us." One by one, the others agreed. All 15 crew members voted to protect the twin dragons, whatever the cost. Rachel felt tears on her face as she looked down at the small creatures warming slowly under her care. They had been thrown away like garbage by their own kind, but humanity had found them and chosen differently. She promised herself that these babies would never feel abandoned again. Outside the station, 3 Cordal warships moved into orbit around the frozen moon. But inside the medical bay, nobody knew that yet. For now, there was only relief and hope and the soft sound of 2 small dragons breathing a little easier than before. 3 weeks had changed everything. Rachel barely recognized her own quarters anymore. What used to be a simple room with a bed and desk was now filled with temperature monitors, feeding equipment, and 2 rapidly growing dragons who seemed to get into everything they could reach. Ash, the name the crew had given to the larger twin, was currently trying to climb the wall panel. His claws scraped against the metal as he stretched toward a ceiling vent that fascinated him. Rachel watched with a mix of amusement and exhaustion. She had not slept more than 4 hours straight since bringing the twins aboard. "Down," she said firmly. Ash looked at her with those glowing amber eyes and chirped. Then he dropped back to the floor and immediately started investigating her boots instead. Smoke, the smaller twin, was curled up on Rachel's bed. This one was quieter and watched everything carefully. While Ash explored and tested every boundary, Smoke observed and learned. Rachel had noticed that Smoke often knew what she needed before she asked for it. If she felt stressed, Smoke would press close and somehow the anxiety would fade. It was like the dragon could sense emotions and respond to them. David knocked and entered carrying a container of the synthetic protein mixture Rachel had developed for feeding the twins. "How are our troublemakers today?" "Growing too fast." Rachel took the container and immediately both dragons rushed over. They had grown from the size of cats to the size of large dogs in just 3 weeks. Their scales were brighter now, shifting colors in the light. Their wings had developed enough that they could glide short distances. I ran projections based on their growth rate. If this continues, they'll be the size of horses in another month. That's impossible. David set down a data pad with his analysis. No known species grows that fast. These two do. Rachel poured the protein mixture into 2 bowls. Both dragons ate with enthusiasm, their tails wagging like happy puppies. "I think the cold nearly killed them, and their bodies are compensating now that they have proper food and warmth. It's like they're making up for lost time." David sat on the floor and Ash immediately climbed into his lap, leaving protein smudges on his uniform. The engineer did not seem to mind. Over the past week, several crew members had formed bonds with the twins. They were impossible not to love. "We have a problem," David said while scratching behind Ash's ear ridge. "A supply ship arrived this morning with news. The Cordal filed a formal complaint with the frontier authorities. They claim we stole sacred property from a ritual site." Rachel felt her blood turn cold. "Property? They're calling them property?" "According to Cordal law, yes. And the Frontier Authority issued a directive. We have 72 hours to return any Cordal biological property or face criminal charges. We could all be banned from frontier space permanently." "No." Rachel's voice was flat and hard. "Absolutely not. I agree with you, but we need to be realistic about what this means. The commander wants to meet with everyone in an hour to discuss options." After David left, Rachel ran more scans on both dragons. What she found made the situation even more complicated. The twins were bonded to her and several other crew members at a biological level. Their brain patterns synchronized with human brain patterns when they were close to their chosen people. Separation caused stress responses in both the dragons and the humans. She pulled up research files on Kortal biology and culture. Most of it was restricted, but she had enough security clearance to access the basics. What she read made her angry enough to throw the datapad across the room. Smoke caught it in midair with surprising reflexes and brought it back to her. The Kortal had deliberately engineered their own species over thousands of years to remove emotional bonds and empathic abilities. They considered such traits to be weakness. Any Kortal born with strong emotional capacity was labeled defective and eliminated. The dragons, according to ancient references Rachel found buried in historical files, had once been partners to the Kortal. They enhanced empathic communication and created bonds between individuals. The Kortal ruling class had declared the dragons dangerous. They represented everything the new Kortal order rejected. Most were hunted to extinction. The few remaining were kept only for controlled breeding, and any twins were always destroyed. Twins bonded too strongly with each other and could not be controlled. Rachel understood now. The Kortal did not want these dragons back because they were valuable. They wanted them dead because they were threats to a society built on emotional suppression. The crew meeting was tense. Commander Robert Hayes laid out the situation clearly. Return the dragons or lose everything they had worked for. Some argued for compliance. Most argued for resistance. The debate went in circles until Rachel stood up with Ash and Smoke at her sides. These are not animals, she said. Her voice carried across the room. I have their brain scans. Neural complexity equal to or exceeding most spacefaring species. They understand language. They form emotional bonds. They show problem-solving ability and creativity. By any legal definition used in human space, they are sentient beings. The Kortal don't see it that way, someone argued. The Kortal also used to keep slaves until 300 years ago. Just because something is legal in their space doesn't make it right. Rachel pulled up her scans on the main display. These twins were murdered by exposure. We saved them. They chose to bond with us. I won't hand them back to die. Beth stood up. I won't either. I spent 40 years in space and I've seen a lot of ugly things. This is where I draw a line. One by one, other crew members stood. Not all of them, but enough. Commander Hayes looked around the room and made his decision. We refuse the directive. I'll send a full report to Earth requesting asylum for Ash and Smoke under human protection. We document everything we know and we let Earth make the final call. The Kortal won't wait for Earth's decision, David warned. I know. Hayes pulled up a star chart. 3 Kortal warships entered orbit 2 hours ago. They're not here to negotiate. The crew fell silent. Outside, visible through the station windows, 3 dark shapes moved against the stars. They were massive, armed, and patient. Rachel felt Smoke press against her leg and Ash's tail wrap around her ankle. The twins knew danger was coming even if they did not understand the details. Hayes opened a communication channel. This is Mining Station Gamma 7 to Kortal vessels. We acknowledge your presence and request peaceful dialogue. The response came in a voice that sounded like grinding ice. You have stolen property of the Kortal Empire. Return it within 1 hour or your station will be destroyed. Rachel picked up Smoke and held the dragon close. Ash pressed against David. The crew looked at each other and in that moment they all knew. They would not surrender. They would protect these babies no matter what happened next. The countdown had begun. The view screen showed a face that might have been carved from stone. The Kortal commander had gray skin pulled tight over angular features and eyes that reflected no light or warmth. When it spoke, the translation software made its voice sound hollow and mechanical. You harbor genetic corruption. This violates natural law. Return what belongs to the Kortal or face consequences. Commander Hayes stood before the screen with his arms crossed. Behind him, the crew had gathered. Rachel held Smoke while David kept one hand on Ash's shoulder. The dragons sensed the tension and pressed close to their humans. These are living beings, not property, Hayes said. They show clear signs of sentience. Under human law and galactic convention, they have rights. Your laws mean nothing here. The corruption was judged and sentenced. Death by cold is the mercy we grant to twins. Their bond makes them unstable. They threaten order. The Kortal commander's expression did not change. You have 45 minutes remaining. The screen went dark. Hayes turned to face his crew. Anyone who wants to leave, the supply ship is still docked. I won't think less of anyone who chooses safety. Nobody moved. Beth spoke for all of them. "We stay together." Rachel carried Smoke to a quiet corner. The dragon was shaking, picking up on the fear in the room. Ash joined them, pressing close to his twin. Rachel put her arms around both of them. "It's okay. We won't let anything happen to you." Smoke made a soft sound, and suddenly Rachel's mind filled with images. Not her own memories, but something older and deeper. She saw Kortal cities from thousands of years ago, but they looked different. There was color and art and life. She saw Kortal people laughing, embracing, showing emotions openly. And among them were dragons, not as servants or property, but as partners and friends. The images shifted. She saw war and destruction. She saw Kortal leaders declaring that emotions made their people weak. She saw dragons being hunted. She saw pears being torn apart and eggs being destroyed. She saw the systematic elimination of everything that made the Kortal culture beautiful and alive. Rachel gasped as the connection broke. Ash and Smoke both had their eyes locked on hers. They had shown her the truth deliberately. These dragons carried genetic memories of what the Kortal used to be, before they chose coldness over feeling. "David, get over here." Rachel's voice was urgent. When the engineer arrived, she had him touch both dragons. The same images flowed into his mind. Then they shared the experience with Hayes and the others. One by one, the crew witnessed the hidden history of the Kortal species. "This changes everything," Hayes said. He was pale and shaken. "They're not trying to reclaim property. They're trying to destroy evidence of what they used to be. We need to broadcast this." David was already moving toward the communication station. "If other Kortal see this, if they know their own history, maybe some of them will question what their leaders are doing." "That could start a war within their empire," someone warned. "Or it could start a revolution," Rachel countered. "These twins represent a chance for the Kortal to reconnect with what they lost. That's why they're so dangerous to the current rulers." Hayes made his decision. "Do it. Broadcast on all open channels. Let everyone in this sector see the truth." David worked quickly. He compiled the shared memories into a data stream and sent it across every frequency the station could access. Within minutes, the transmission was spreading. Every ship within range received it. More importantly, one of the 3 Kortal warships received it. The response was immediate. The lead warship charged its weapons. Energy readings spiked across their scanners. Hayes ordered everyone to the shelter pods, but the crew refused to leave the dragons. If they were going to die, they would die together. Then something unexpected happened. The 3rd Kortal warship, the one positioned farthest from the station, broke formation. It moved between the station and the other 2 warships. Its shields came up. A new voice came through the communication channel. This one sounded younger and less certain. "This is Navigator Tresh of the vessel Silent Wing. I have committed mutiny against my commander. I will not allow the destruction of truth." The lead Kortal warship turned its weapons toward the mutineer. "Tresh, stand down immediately. You have been corrupted by human lies." "These are not lies. I feel the truth in them. I have a sibling, Commander. We were always told our bond was a weakness to overcome. But I watched these memories and I understand now. We were not born wrong. We were born right. And our society is what went wrong." Rachel felt hope flare in her chest. Smoke and Ash both stood taller, their scales glowing brighter. They sensed that something important was happening. "You will be destroyed along with the humans," the Kortal commander warned. "Then I will die knowing I chose truth over law. Fire if you must." Tresh's ship held its position. The standoff stretched for long minutes. The lead warship's weapons remained charged. Hayes prepared to implement his emergency plan. David had suggested using the mining drills to create a debris field, anything to buy them time. It was a desperate idea, but it was all they had. Before they could act, new contacts appeared on their sensors. 3 more ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. But these were not military vessels. They were civilian transports, and they were broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is the transport unity speaking for 17 ships in formation. We are Kortal citizens who received the transmission. We demand answers about our history. We demand to speak with the humans who saved the twin dragons. We demand truth. Rachel stared at the screen in disbelief. 17 ships. Hundreds of Kortal civilians coming to their defense. The broadcast had reached farther and faster than they imagined possible. The lead Kortal commander was silent for a long time. When it finally spoke, the voice was strained. This situation requires guidance from the High Council. All vessels will maintain position until authority can determine proper response. It was not surrender, but it was not destruction either. The warships powered down their weapons. The crisis was paused, not ended. Hayes sagged with relief. David let out a laugh that sounded close to crying. Beth started organizing food because that was what you did when you survived something impossible. Rachel just held the dragons close and whispered thanks to whatever luck or fate had brought those civilian ships in time. Ash and Smoke had stopped shaking. They looked up at Rachel with their glowing eyes, and she felt their trust like a physical warmth. They believed she would protect them. The crew had believed it too, and somehow, impossibly, it had worked. But Rachel knew this was only the beginning. The Kortal Empire would not change overnight. There would be more danger ahead. For now, though, they had bought time and maybe planted seeds of doubt in hearts that had been taught never to feel. The frozen moon continued its orbit, carrying a small mining station that had become the center of something much larger than anyone could have predicted. The transport ships came closer, and the station's communication board lit up with dozens of incoming calls. Kortal voices, uncertain and questioning, asking permission to dock, asking to see the dragons, asking if the memories were real. Commander Hayes felt overwhelmed, but he organized a rotation system. They could only accommodate 5 visitors at a time in the station's small meeting room. The crew worked in shifts to manage the constant flow of Kortal civilians who had traveled across space because of a transmission that challenged everything they had been taught. Rachel stood in the meeting room with Ash and Smoke at her sides. The dragons were now large enough that they had to fold their wings carefully to fit through doorways. Their presence dominated the space, but they were gentle and calm. They seemed to understand the importance of these meetings. The first group of Kortal visitors entered slowly. They moved stiffly, unused to expressing the emotions that clearly showed on their faces. Wonder, fear, confusion. One of them, an older Kortal with darker gray skin, approached carefully. "May I?" The alien gestured toward Smoke. Rachel nodded. The Kortal reached out with a trembling hand and touched Smoke's scales. The dragon leaned into the touch and made a soft, welcoming sound. The alien's face transformed. Tears ran down angular cheeks. "I had a sibling," the Kortal said quietly. "We were separated at youth and told we must not contact each other. Our bond was listed as a deficiency in our records. I have not seen my sibling in 40 years. The alien looked at Rachel. Was the transmission true? Did our people once live differently? The dragons shared memories with us. Genetic memories passed down through generations. Your people once celebrated bonds and emotions. The dragons were partners who helped facilitate understanding and connection." Rachel chose her words carefully. "I cannot tell you what to believe, but I can tell you that these twins were left to die simply for being twins. We found that wrong, so we saved them." Another Kortal stepped forward, younger and more agitated. "The High Council says emotions make us weak. They say the old ways led to chaos and war. How do you know they are wrong?" David had joined the meeting and he answered, "We don't know, but we know that throwing away children because they love each other too much is evil. We know that erasing your own history to maintain power is tyranny. Maybe emotions do make you vulnerable. Maybe bonds can be used to hurt you, but maybe that's the price of being alive in a way that matters." The group talked for another hour before the next rotation arrived. Each group asked similar questions. Each group touched the dragons carefully as if they were made of glass, and each group left looking different than when they arrived. Something had shifted in them, some crack in the armor their society had built around their hearts. Navigator Tresh requested a private meeting on the 3rd day of the standoff. Hayes allowed it, though half the crew stood ready with improvised weapons in case it was a trap. Tresh arrived alone and unarmed, which was itself a statement of trust. The Kortal navigator was smaller than the others Rachel had met, with lighter gray skin and eyes that seemed less cold. Tresh moved to where Ash was resting and sat down directly on the floor beside the dragon. Ash studied the alien for a moment, then placed his large head in Tresh's lap. "I have a sibling named Voth," Tresh said while carefully stroking Ash's scales. "We were told our entire lives that our bond was improper, that we should each focus on duty and service to the Empire rather than on each other. We tried to comply, but it was like trying to stop breathing. The bond was part of who we were." "Where is Voth now?" Rachel asked. "On the Silent Wing with me. They supported my mutiny, though it means we can never return home. We will be labeled traitors and criminals. Our family will be shamed." Tresh did not sound regretful, just tired. "But I watched your transmission and I understood. We were not broken. Our society is broken." Smoke moved closer and pressed against Tresh's side. The navigator wrapped one arm around the dragon, and Rachel saw something she had not seen in any Kortal before. "Open affection without restraint or shame. How many others feel the way you do?" David asked. "More than the High Council knows. The transmission is spreading through Kortal space faster than they can suppress it. There are calls for investigation into the historical records. Some are demanding that the breeding programs be ended and the remaining dragons be freed." Tresh looked up at the humans. "This will not be peaceful. There are those who will fight to maintain the current order. Blood will be spilled. What will you do?" Hayes asked. "I will stand with my sibling, and I will protect these dragons if you allow it. They represent hope for a different future." Tresh stood up slowly. Ash made a disappointed sound at losing his new friend, but allowed it. "There is something else you should know. 3 more sets of twins have been smuggled out of Kortal breeding facilities. Sympathetic citizens risked everything to save them. They are bringing the twins here because they have heard this station offers sanctuary." Rachel's eyes went wide. 3 more sets? That's 6 more dragons? Yes, they are younger than these 2. They will need care and protection.
"Can you help them?"
The crew looked at each other. Their small mining station was already stretched to its limit. 6 more rapidly growing dragons would be impossible to handle. But as Rachel looked at Ash and Smoke, she knew what the answer had to be. "We'll find a way. Bring them here." Over the next week, the refugees arrived. 3 ships, each carrying a pair of young dragon twins and the Kortal families who had saved them. The families were afraid but determined. They had given up everything they knew for a chance at something better. The station became chaotic. 8 dragons, ranging from newborn size to the now horse-sized Ash and Smoke, filled every available space. 17 Kortal refugees needed quarters and food. The crew worked around the clock to accommodate everyone, but something beautiful was happening. The Kortal refugees were learning to express emotions they had suppressed their entire lives. The dragons bonded with both humans and Kortal, creating bridges of understanding. Children of both species played together without the barriers their elders carried. Rachel watched a young Kortal child, barely old enough to walk, toddle up to Smoke and hug the dragon's leg. Smoke lowered his head and nuzzled the child gently. The child's parent watched with tears streaming down their face, experiencing emotions they had been taught to fear. "This is what we lost," the parent whispered. "This is what they took from us." David was working on plans to expand the station. Earth had sent a message of support and promised resources. Other human colonies were offering to help. The mining station was transforming into something new. A sanctuary, a place where those fleeing oppression could find safety and learn to live differently. But the Kortal Empire was not done with them. Military ships gathered at the borders of the system. The High Council issued declarations of condemnation. Economic sanctions were placed on human space. The peace was fragile and temporary. Hayes called another meeting with the core crew and the Kortal refugees. "We need to make a choice. We can try to hold this position and hope Earth sends protection, or we can request that this moon be declared neutral territory, open to all species seeking asylum. That would put us under galactic law instead of human jurisdiction. It might offer better protection. It would also mean giving up some control," Beth pointed out. Tresh spoke up. "But it would mean this place belongs to all of us equally. Human and Kortal together. That seems right." The vote was unanimous. They would petition for neutral sanctuary status. Hayes sent the formal request through official channels and waited for the bureaucratic wheels to turn. While they waited, life on the station continued. The dragons grew and bonded and brought light to people who had lived in emotional darkness for too long. Rachel found herself teaching Kortal refugees how to play with their children, how to laugh without shame, how to cry when sadness demanded release. And at night, when the station was quiet, Rachel would stand at the observation window with Ash and Smoke beside her. They would watch the stars together and she would wonder what came next. They had started something that could not be stopped. The question was whether it would grow into something wonderful or collapse into violence. The attack came at shift change when half the crew was sleeping and the other half was distracted. A small Cordal strike team bypassed the larger warships and approached from the dark side of the moon, using stealth technology. They attached explosive charges to the station's outer hull before anyone detected them. The blast knocked Rachel out of her bed and sent equipment crashing across her quarters. Emergency alarms shrieked through the corridors. Smoke was on top of her immediately, using his body to shield her from falling debris. Ash appeared in the doorway, scales glowing bright with agitation. Hull breach in Section 4, the computer announced. Emergency protocols active. All personnel evacuate to shelter zones. Rachel pulled herself up and ran toward the command center with both dragons at her heels. Other crew members were emerging from quarters, some injured, all disoriented. David had a cut across his forehead but was already directing people to safety. Hayes was at the main console assessing damage. The breach is contained, but we lost environmental controls in 2 sections. Medical bay is intact. The Cordal families are safe in the lower levels. Who attacked us? Beth demanded while applying a bandage to her arm. A strike team, 6 soldiers in assault gear. They're inside the station now. Hayes pulled up internal sensors. 6 red dots moved through the corridors toward the lower levels where the Dragon twins and Cortal refugees sheltered. They're not here to destroy the station. They're here to finish what they started. They want the dragons dead. Rachel felt cold fear grip her chest. The 8 dragons were all in the lower sections. 6 of them were still too young to defend themselves. We have to stop them. We're miners, not soldiers. David checked the weapons locker and found 2 plasma cutters and 3 emergency flares. This is what we have to work with. Then we get creative. Rachel's mind raced. She knew this station better than anyone. She had spent months mapping every passage and system. The lower sections have the old ice tunnels we blocked off during construction. If we can herd the strike team into those passages, we can trap them. Tresh had joined them, along with 3 other Cordal refugees who had military training from before they defected. We know their tactics. Cordal assault teams work in pairs with overlapping fields of fire. They will be efficient and ruthless. Can you fight your own people? Hayes asked directly. They stopped being my people when they chose murder over truth. Tresh took one of the plasma cutters. Show me where you need us. Rachel led them through maintenance shafts while monitoring the strike team's progress on her portable scanner. The enemy soldiers were moving methodically toward the lower levels. They would reach the dragons within 10 minutes. The humans and allied Cordal split into 3 groups. Hayes and Beth would create a distraction from the front. Tresh and the other refugees would attack from the side passages. Rachel and David would evacuate the dragons and refugees through the ice tunnels while Ash and Smoke helped defend. It was a desperate plan, but it was all they had. Rachel dropped through an access hatch into the lower level and found chaos. The younger dragons were frightened and crying out. The Cortal families were trying to calm them while preparing to defend their adopted children with nothing but mining tools. Everyone listen to me, Rachel shouted over the noise. We have incoming hostiles, but we have an escape route. Follow me and stay quiet. She led them toward the sealed entrance to the old ice tunnels. David was already there, using a plasma cutter to melt through the seal they had welded shut months ago. The metal glowed red and then gave way. Cold air rushed through the opening. The families moved quickly, each carrying or herding the smaller dragons. Rachel counted heads as they passed. The young Cordal child she had seen playing with Smoke days ago went by, clinging to their parent and crying silently. One of the smallest dragons stumbled and Rachel scooped it up. Its scales were hot with fear. A plasma bolt screamed past her head and exploded against the wall. The strike team had arrived. 2 soldiers in black armor appeared at the far end of the corridor, weapons raised. They fired again, and David threw himself in front of the fleeing refugees. Then Ash and Smoke moved. The 2 dragons were now massive, their wingspan almost too large for the corridor. They charged the soldiers with a roar that shook the walls. The soldiers switched targets and fired at the dragons. Ash took a plasma bolt to his shoulder but did not slow. He crashed into the first soldier with the force of a freight train. The soldier's armor cracked and the Cortal inside screamed. Smoke followed, using his tail like a whip to knock the second soldier's weapon away. More soldiers appeared. Hayes and Beth were fighting somewhere above, the sounds of plasma fire and shouting echoing through the station. Tresh and the other refugees engaged the strike team from a side passage. The battle was fierce and confused. Rachel got the last of the refugees and young dragons into the ice tunnel. David was right behind her, backing through the entrance while firing his makeshift flare gun to provide cover. The flares burned bright and hot, forcing the Cordal soldiers to take cover. "Ash, Smoke, fall back," Rachel commanded. The dragons broke off their attack and retreated toward the tunnel. Both were wounded but mobile. Their scales had taken most of the damage, cracked and scorched but already beginning to heal. David sealed the entrance behind them with the plasma cutter, melting the edges together into a solid barrier. It would not hold long against military weapons, but it bought them minutes. They moved deeper into the ice tunnels, following passages that had been carved by ancient geological processes. The tunnels were a maze. Rachel navigated by memory and instinct, leading them away from the station and into the frozen depths of the moon. The temperature dropped rapidly. The younger dragons huddled close to their Cordal families for warmth. Ash and Smoke moved alongside, their bodies radiating heat that kept everyone from freezing. They emerged into a large cavern where stalactites of blue ice hung from the ceiling like frozen teeth. Rachel called a halt and did a head count. Everyone had made it. 23 Cordal refugees, 8 dragons, and 5 human crew members. David had burns on his arms. One of the Cordal had a broken leg. Ash and Smoke had plasma burns across their scales. But they were alive. Above them, through layers of ice and rock, the battle continued. Hayes and the others were still fighting to protect the station and buy time for the evacuees. Rachel wanted to go back and help, but she had a different responsibility now. She had to keep these refugees and dragons safe. A young Cordal approached her, the one whose parent had cried while watching them hug Smoke. The child held out a small piece of cloth. "You are bleeding." Rachel touched her face and her fingers came away red. She had not even noticed the cut. She took the cloth and smiled. "Thank you." The child smiled back, an expression that still looked strange on Cordal features but was growing more natural with practice. "Will we be safe here?" Rachel looked at the dragons, at the refugees, at David, who was already setting up a portable heater. She thought about Hayes and the others fighting above. She thought about Tresh, who had betrayed their entire empire to protect truth. She thought about all the impossible things that had happened since she found 2 freezing babies in an ice cave. "Yes," she said, and hoped it was true. "We'll be safe." Smoke pressed against her side and shared warmth. Ash stood at the tunnel entrance, keeping watch. The other dragons settled down with their chosen families. And in a frozen cavern beneath a hostile moon, refugees from 2 species waited for whatever came next. The station above had gone silent. Rachel did not know if that was good or bad. She activated her emergency beacon and sent a signal toward human space. "Help us," it said. "We tried to do the right thing and now we are under attack. Please help us." Then there was nothing to do but wait and hope that someone heard. Help arrived from an unexpected direction. The human defense fleet ship that dropped out of faster-than-light travel was not the largest or most powerful, but it carried enough firepower to change the situation immediately. Behind it came 2 more ships, and behind those came a dozen civilian transports filled with supplies and volunteers. Word of the mining station's stand had spread through human space like wildfire. The story of ordinary people refusing to surrender helpless children had captured something in the human spirit. Donations poured in. Off-duty military personnel volunteered. Scientists and doctors and engineers offered their skills. Earth had mobilized faster than any official government action could explain. The human defense fleet ship broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Williams of the HDF Resolute. Any hostile forces in this system will stand down immediately or face engagement. The mining station and its inhabitants are under human protection." The Cordal warships that had been holding position since the standoff began did not respond. They simply retreated to the edge of the system and waited. The strike team inside the station had been captured by Hayes and the others after a brutal fight. 3 crew members were injured but alive. The soldiers were locked in the cargo bay under guard. Rachel led the refugees back through the ice tunnels when the all-clear signal came. They emerged to find the station transformed. Human volunteers were already arriving, setting up medical facilities, unloading supplies, beginning repairs to the damaged sections. The atmosphere had changed from desperate survival to organized purpose. Hayes met Rachel in the main corridor and pulled her into a fierce hug. He had a black eye and his uniform was scorched, but he was grinning. We did it. We actually did it. Did what exactly? Rachel was exhausted and overwhelmed. The young dragon she still carried squirmed and she set it down carefully. Changed everything. Hayes pulled up a data stream on his pad. Look at this. 37 Cordal colony worlds have reported protests and demonstrations. Citizens demanding access to historical records. Demands for the breeding programs to end. There are calls for the High Council to step down. We started a revolution. Tresh joined them with tears running freely down angular features. The Cordal was openly crying and did not try to hide it. My sibling contacted me. Voth says there are thousands in the streets on our homeworld. They are chanting the names of the twins. Ash and smoke have become symbols of resistance. Over the following weeks, the mining station evolved into something much larger. Earth officially declared the moon neutral territory and established it as a sanctuary for any being fleeing oppression or persecution. The designation came with funding, resources, and protection. What had been a simple mining operation became the foundation for something unprecedented in galactic politics. Construction crews arrived and began building permanent structures. Medical facilities expanded to handle multiple species. Educational centers were established to teach refugees about emotions and bonds they had been denied. The dragons were no longer hidden secrets but celebrated symbols of hope. Ash and smoke had grown to their full size now. They were magnificent creatures with wingspans that could cover half the station. Their scales shimmered with inner light and their eyes held deep intelligence. They had bonded not just with Rachel and the original crew, but with dozens of humans and Cordal. They moved through the growing colony like benevolent guardians, offering comfort and protection to all who needed it. Rachel had been appointed director of the sanctuary, a role she had never imagined but somehow fit naturally. She stood now in the observation dome that crowned the new central structure and looked out at what they had built. Housing modules for 500 residents, agricultural domes growing food, a school where Cordal children learned to laugh and play, a medical center where trauma, both physical and emotional, could heal. 3 more sets of dragon twins had arrived, smuggled out by brave Cordal who risked everything. Each set bonded with refugees and helped facilitate the emotional healing that was the sanctuary's true purpose. The dragons were not magical beings, but their ability to sense and share emotions helped break down barriers that words alone could not cross. David found her watching the sunset, if you could call it that, on a moon. The gas giant they orbited cast strange colored light across the ice fields. Earth sent another message. They want you to speak at the Galactic Assembly. Tell them about what we built here. I'm not a politician or a diplomat. No, you're better. You're someone who saw babies freezing to death and decided that was unacceptable. That's the only qualification that matters. David stood beside her and they watched ash and smoke soar through the thin atmosphere, their wings catching the light. The Cordal Empire is fracturing. 2 colony worlds have declared independence. 5 more are considering it. The old order is dying. People will suffer during the transition. Change is never clean. No, but it's necessary. And we gave them something to change toward. A proof that a different way is possible. David smiled. Beth wants to name the colony. She suggested Hope Station. Too obvious. That's what I said. What would you call it? Rachel thought about it while watching the dragons dance in the sky. She thought about the impossible journey from finding 2 dying babies to building a sanctuary that housed hundreds. She thought about all the small choices that led here, each one feeling insignificant at the time but together forming something remarkable. Bridge, she said finally. Call it Bridge Station. Because that's what we are. A bridge between what was and what could be. A bridge between species. A bridge between fear and hope. I like it. David activated his communication device. I'll tell Beth. A young Cordal ran up to Rachel, the same child who had offered her a cloth during the battle in the ice caves. The child was laughing, truly laughing, while being chased by one of the smaller dragons in a game of tag. The child's parent followed, smiling in a way that would have been illegal in Cordal space just months ago. Director Rachel, come play with us, the child called. Rachel felt Smoke's presence before she saw him. The massive dragon landed on the observation platform with a thump that shook the floor. He lowered his head and pressed against her, sharing warmth and affection. Ash landed beside him and both dragons radiated contentment. This is what they had fought for. Not grand political change or diplomatic victories, though those mattered. They fought for the simple right of children to play without fear, for parents to love openly, for beings to choose their own path instead of having it dictated by cold tradition. A signal came through the station's communication system. Another distress call, another group seeking sanctuary. This time it was not Cortal but a different species entirely, one Rachel had never encountered. They had heard about Bridge Station and were asking for help. Rachel looked at David and they both smiled. The work was never done. There would always be more refugees, more beings fleeing oppression, more chances to prove that compassion was not weakness but the foundation of something stronger than any empire. "Tell them we have room," Rachel said. "Tell them they're welcome here." Smoke made a sound that might have been agreement. Ash spread his wings wide as if embracing the sky. The young Cortal child grabbed Rachel's hand and pulled her toward the play area. And in that moment, on a frozen moon that had once been nothing but a mining operation, Rachel understood what they had really accomplished. They had not changed the galaxy. Not yet. But they had created a place where change was possible. A place where the abandoned could find family, where the afraid could find courage, where those who had forgotten how to feel could learn again. Bridge Station stood as proof that small acts of kindness could echo across star systems, that refusing to accept cruelty as normal could inspire others to do the same, that sometimes the most important battles were not fought with weapons, but with the simple decision to care when it would be easier not to. The dragons soared above while refugees from a dozen worlds looked up in wonder. And Rachel knew that whatever challenges came next, they would face them together, human and alien, dragon and refugee, all bound by the choice to build something better than what came before. The frozen moon continued its eternal orbit, but it was no longer a cold and empty place. It was home to hundreds who had nowhere else to go. It was a beacon to thousands more still trapped in rigid systems that denied their basic nature. And it all started because one person refused to walk away from two small creatures left to die in the ice. Sometimes the smallest choices create the largest changes. Sometimes compassion is the most radical act. And sometimes if you are very lucky, you get to see the seeds you planted grow into something beautiful. Rachel watched the dragons dance in the alien light and smiled. This was just the beginning.